welcome everybody. We're back with the second workshop of People's University 2020. For those of you who missed last month's workshop, People's University is hosted by the Philadelphia Coalition for Affordable Communities, a citywide coalition of nearly 60 community, disability, faith, labor, urban agriculture, and arts organizations that have been working together for years to win more resources for affordable, accessible housing and for urban farms to achieve our goal of development without displacement. So my name's Emma Borbor. I'm just one of your facilitators tonight. We'll be joined by lots of members of the coalition who you'll meet as we move through the different sections throughout the night. Yeah, we're excited to be here with you. We're excited everyone could still make it when we're online instead of in person for this huge election that we have coming up. So to kick us off, we're going to do an intro question to see, what are some things you've been wondering about around mail-in voting. So our intro question is, what is one question or concern that you have about mail-in voting? You can go ahead and put that answer in the chat. What's one question that you have about mail-in voting?
Question.
Yeah, I'm seeing, will it get there in time to count? That's something we're going to be talking about tonight. Yep, yeah. Well, when will I get my ballot? Is it the best option for me? Yep, ballot drop-off locations, we'll be talking about that. Yeah, just how it works in general, how to get people to vote by mail, how you can track the mail-in ballot. This is great. This is all your questions are all things that we're going to be covering tonight. This is great. Great. Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you all so much for answering that. We're all of basically everything people said in the chat we're going to be talking about tonight, so you are in the right place. And yeah, excited to get into it. Before we continue, I have two, sort of disclaimers. One is that this is a nonpartisan voter education series. So that being said, we have a strong position on housing. So while we're not partisan, we do have a point of view on housing, and that will come out in these workshops. And the series of workshops, the 3 People's University series, will be framed around how the upcoming federal election will impact our local housing conditions here in Philly. The second thing I want to flag, and you'll hear me referencing this throughout, anything we talk about tonight is going to be specific to Pennsylvania. So the way elections are run in the US is a bit wild, and basically every state gets to do it the way they want to do it. So there isn't a main national election system. It's state by state. So if you've lived in another place before, like, you might hear some stuff tonight that's different than what you've done before. But we'll be giving you the information you need to vote in Philly or in Pennsylvania. Yeah, there's actually some new information that just came out this week that's specific to Pennsylvania that we'll be getting into. Yeah, I'm gonna pass it to Christy for a quick reminder.
Yeah, again, welcome everybody. We're asking folks to rename yourselves, so making sure that we can see who you are. So you can click on participants, find your name, click on more, and then rename yourself. And if you need ASL interpretation, please put ASL at the end of your name so we get you into the right breakout groups later.
Great. And now I'm going to pass it to Mary and Izzy to walk us through our goals, agenda, and some group agreements for the night.
Hi, I'm Izzy.
I'm Mary.
So this is the second in a 3-workshop series getting us ready for the upcoming election. There are a lot of people who think federal elections and federal decisions are more disconnected from our daily lives, especially as it relates to housing. We spent our last session connecting the dots about how the president can impact housing in Philly and how Philly impacts the upcoming presidential election.
So tonight we're going to talk about the process of voting this year, and it is different. How we're going to talk about how it's different from past presidential elections, specifically focusing on the mail-in ballots. And we're going to make sure that everybody knows their rights pertaining to this. So first we're going to review our goals. We're going to make sure everyone feels empowered with information of how to vote by mail. We're going to make sure you know your rights to protect you against voter suppression. This is super important. And we're going to set everybody up with a plan to vote. So when you leave, you're like, I know exactly what I'm doing. So this is a bit of the run through for the agenda. We've already done our little welcome. We're now in our goals section. We're going to do a little exercise of a temperature check of like a thumbs up, thumbs down that we'll explain in a second. Then we'll be talking about the fight for voting rights and why it's important. We'll be doing a little true false exercise about mail-in voting, just so, because there's a lot of misinformation out there, and we want to make sure that you have the good information. Then a mail-in voting how-to, which makes it easy to make your plan of how you will go about it. And then a know your rights, true, false. So again, combating a lot of misinformation that is out there right now. And then we'll close it out. And there'll probably be a little stretch break in there too, somewhere.
So before we launch into this little exercise, we're gonna sort of set up some group agreements for this little session we have together today. And the first group agreement is a little shorthand that's mysterious called step up, step back. And basically what that means is if you know you're someone who talks a lot, try to take a step back every once in a while to make space for others who don't feel as comfortable talking so much, so they can also be heard. And conversely, if you are somebody who knows you don't like to talk so much, we invite you to take more space and step up and talk some more. And the second group agreement is that there are no bad questions. Every question is valid. This is how we learn. This is why we're here. And now we can add any other group agreements that you all feel would be useful for us to hold in this space together this evening. And as you come up with them, you can drop them in the chat. They can be as simple as like, I need a pee break, or you know, I need to know your pronouns or stuff like that. Anything is valid. And you can drop them in the chat, and Christy will start to add them to this shared document we have right now. And we'll just have a few minutes for that. No pressure. These are also really solid group agreements to work with and move forward together.
Respect others' opinions.
Are they opinions?
Oh, respect others' opinions? Was that
Oh, respect others' opinions, is that one?
Yes.
Nice. Yes. Great, okay. If any others come to you, feel free to drop them in the chat. No worries about unmuting yourself or any of that. I'm gonna pass it to Christy really quick.
Great, I just had to unmute myself. So we are about to go into an activity where we're gonna wanna see all of your beautiful faces. So in a minute, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And when I do that, we wanna encourage everybody to go into gallery view. So when you put your mouse cursor on the screen up at the top, you should be able to change your view. In the top right corner, you can see it says speaker view, and that means you're only seeing one person who's speaking. And if you click on that again, it will say gallery view, which means you get the Brady Bunch view, you get to see everybody's faces. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and give you all a minute to do that before our activity.
Cool. It's really exciting to see everybody's face here, and there's so many people in the room, which is exciting. So now that we're in gallery view, we're basically going to do a little exercise to get a sense of everyone's experience with mail-in voting, because I know a lot of people, it might be the first time. So in the exercise, I'm just going to read a series of statements, or Izzy is actually going to read a series of statements. And if the statement is true for you, you can give a thumbs up to be like, yeah, that feels true. If you're like, I don't know, you can do a thumbs sideways. And if you're like, that does not feel true, you can do thumbs down. Just like Joaquin Phoenix in Gladiator, if you've seen that. So thumbs up if it feels true, if you're like, I don't know, and then like a thumbs down if you're like, nah. If you want to not use your hands, at the bottom of the screen, you'll see reactions, this little button, reactions, and when you press on it, you'll see a little thumbs up is available to you, so you could just do the emoji thumbs up if you prefer. It looks like that. Boom. It covered Izzy's face. Okay, here we go. Let's give it a whirl.
Have you voted by mail before? Cool. Do you feel confident your vote will be counted in the vote by mail process?
Yeah. I feel you, thumbs.
Positive though. Have you never voted before? Almost a trick question, but do you wonder if your vote really matters? Do you believe that voting is a way to show our people power? Cool, that was really interesting and exciting to see everybody's range of feelings to those questions. Yeah, I feel like we have a really cool sense of where we're all at now. And I'm gonna pass it to Kadeen.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Before we start to talk about voting this year, we want to take a moment to really ground ourselves in the struggle for voting rights. This year happens to mark 55 years since the Voting Rights Act became law, 100 years since women got the right to vote, and it also marks 150 years since the 15th Amendment, which granted African American men the right to vote through many states. Although many states in the South put up new barriers to prohibit voting, like poll taxes and literacy tests. So I prepared a poem that I want to share with you, and then we're going to reflect on the poem together. So the screen is going to go back to sharing, and the poem is in a video.
The truth is, we've played this game before. We know you cheat and we'll still try to even the score. You try to trick us by saying our vote really doesn't count, but from the very beginning you tried to stop us. Here, let's take an account. The 15th Amendment gave black men the right to the ballot box, so you devised ways to stop them, some blatant, most subtle like a fox. Tests devised to embarrass and demean, like can you guess the right number of this jar of jelly beans? Then you implemented a poll tax knowing we couldn't afford to pay, literacy tests, Jim Crow laws, and let's not forget about Bloody Sunday. Yes, we've seen this game before in the past. You didn't want us to play, and now you're doing it all over again in a more subtle way. Polls are open, but machines are broken. Lines get longer, so people awareness gets stronger. Voting sites close, early voting is restricted. Exact match IDs policies where only our communities are afflicted. We're in the middle of a pandemic and want to cast our vote by mail, but suddenly mailboxes are disappearing, locked up for no reason, jail. This year marks 150 years since we finally got this right, yet your tricks and attempts to stop us always make us have to fight. So here's what we're gonna do since you just won't play fair. We're gonna swarm in numbers you've never seen. This is warfare. You're closing down voting sites, so we're opening up arenas. We're all showing up to vote like we all got subpoenas. Our protest was just practice on how to stand and wait for hours. We're taking back control because this country isn't yours, it's ours. We're no longer believing the lies you whisper to conjure up mistrust. We now believe in the power of our vote because you're always trying so hard to stop us.
Woohoo!
Fabulous.
Thank you. So I just want us all to reflect on that. I have a first question. What really stood out to you? You can write it in the chat. You can feel free to unmute yourself and speak freely. We have a few moments to actually reflect on this together. So Izzy and Mary said we're gonna swarm. So feel free to take yourself off of mute and reflect on that.
We're ready. We're ready to swarm.
Ready to swarm. Someone else said all the knowledge that you dropped. That is Rakia. Did I say your name right? Was there any of the knowledge that rang true for you?
Entire poem. The fact that, again, they open up laws, right, because we fight. It's a constant fight, and even when they so-called give us the rights, then they put things in place to prohibit us from exercising those rights, and that was like the perfect articulation of it. Thank you for it.
Thank you. It really is, because it really is true. So many, there's myths that get perpetuated throughout our communities that our voice don't count, but you can't look at what people say, you gotta look at their actions. And if our voice really didn't count, why are they trying so hard to constantly stop us, right? So next I have, we're showing up like we have subpoenas. That's from Miss Ebony. Would you like to elaborate? Oh, I think your sound, we can't hear you. It looks like it's off of mute. Nope. Is it connected to audio? Okay. Okay. She's gonna work out her sound, if I read her lips correctly.
I think I also saw Franny was raising her hand.
Okay, awesome. Yes, Franny, please share.
You're on mute too, Franny.
While we're waiting on Franny, she really did a thorough history. My goodness. That was,
Yes.
I need a copy of that.
Okay, the link is in the comments if you want it, and we can email it to you too if that's easier. Sure, no
Thank
problem.
you very much.
I had to do the history on that because I was completely flabbergasted by the history. I didn't know that they used to do things like, hey, you want to vote? Sure, count these amount of jelly beans in a jar. So it was important to highlight some of those tactics that were used because, again, some people may not understand the truth behind the fact that they really do try to stop the vote. We do have a few more minutes. Someone said your poem was powerful. Thank you. It is the truth. The truth is always motivating and powerful, I believe. Someone wrote, we're opening up arenas. Yes, I was very excited to learn that we're gonna open arenas as voting sites. I mean, talk about space, right? Mr. Guy, hi, Mr. Guy, Mr. Tony, you said the Her Story, His Story, the history behind it. Yes. Another question that we have, what parts do you relate to? Does anyone have any stories that they know of with voter suppression, or any part that might relate, or you know any different historical facts? You could look in the chat or raise your hand. So I have a comment here that says, oh, yay, there you go,
Okay, good.
Ebony.
I just wanted to make sure I could be heard, so yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Dominique wrote, your poem is a great reminder of why we need to vote and allow our voices to be heard. Thank you for speaking for all the disenfranchised people. Very awesome. It is a great reminder. One thing that was really disheartening to learn was that 500,000 people in Philadelphia did not vote the last 2016 election. So it's just very, very important to share as much info as you can and get people out to vote. The takeaway from all of this is basically, again, if our vote couldn't change our country, then they wouldn't put in so much effort to stop us from voting. So use your voting power, use your voice, spread the word. And we want to exercise that right to vote for sure. Thank you very much. I'm going to pass this over to Ebony.
Thanks, Katie. Can everybody hear me okay? Cool. So I just want to reiterate that poem really, really resonated and really, really hit home. So good job. Thank you so much for doing that and sharing that with us. So yeah, unfortunately, there are still people today trying to suppress votes for their own gain, which we'll talk about in a minute. But for now, I'm going to read a series of statements about the mail-in ballot process, and you all will have a chance to answer true or false to those statements. So there's going to be a link shared in the chat box to a Google slide, and you will all be able to edit it. So I'm going to give people a chance to get to the slide. And on the slide is our first true or false question. And you can see that there's a side of the slide marked true and one marked false. So as I read the statement, you'll be able to click on the icons on the bottom right corner and drag it to which one you think is correct. And just so you know, this is anonymous, so we cannot see who votes which way.
Am I supposed to be able to see the true and false right now?
Yes, so there's the link in the chat box.
And then if people don't want to do the link, Christy's going to go ahead and share her screen, so you can just follow along on the screen. If you don't want to do the interactive slide, you can just put your answers in the chat.
Thank you.
So the first question is, millions of mail-in ballots will be printed and mailed to people in foreign countries. So at the right bottom side of the slide, you can see there are X's. Just drag one of those X's and place it on the true or false box. And I'll let a few more seconds go before we move on. Looks like so far, almost everyone is saying that that is false. Cool. So that statement is indeed false. Just to back it up, the FBI reported that there's no evidence to suggest this. And also this would be extremely difficult due to the decentralization of US elections on top of the many safeguards that are in place. So some of the safeguards included, really quickly, IDs must be submitted. You must include your social security number. Signatures will be matched with your signature on your voter registration card. And also there will be external auditor to double check the procedures. So let's go ahead and move on to the next question. And so the next question is, drop boxes will increase mail-in ballot fraud. So same thing, go ahead and grab an X and let us know if you think that is true or false. All right. Looks like the people have cast their vote, and that is indeed false, as you all have so accurately suggested. Drop boxes will not increase mail-in ballot fraud. Now we're going to just go ahead and move on to question 3, and we just have 4 questions here, so we won't be doing this too much longer. And the third question is, drop boxes pose a health risk because they are not COVID sanitized. So let us know if those questions are, if this question is true or false. So again, this is a false statement. COVID is primarily spread through person-to-person contact. And of course, for added measure, you should wear a face mask and also bring hand sanitizer if you choose to vote this way. And for the 4th and final question, every registered voter will be mailed a ballot. Every registered voter will be mailed a ballot. So let us know if you believe that is true or false. Cool. So again, that question is false. In Pennsylvania, you must request a mail-in ballot. You will not automatically be mailed a ballot just because you are registered to vote. So 2 things, 2 main things that all of these questions have in common. One, which you'll probably all realize at this point, is that they're all false. And then the second thing is that they were all made by President Donald Trump. So before we move on, are there any takeaways or comments or thoughts or reflections people have about any of these questions? Anything they would like to add? All right. It would be cool if every registered voter was mailed a ballot. I hear you. It seems like it would be convenient, but the polls will be open and, you know, everybody has, you know, a different, you know, way that they want to do it. So having that option is something that we need. Anything else people want to comment on? Any reflections? Is anybody surprised that Donald Trump made all of these false statements about mail-in voting? No. Cool. All right. All right, cool. So if there's no additional reflections, I just want to reiterate that there's no evidence to support an increase in voter fraud due to using the mail-in ballot method. And it seems that Trump wants us to distrust the integrity of the process. It turns out initial mail-in ballot research has revealed that Democrats far outpace Republican requests for mail-in ballots. And in Pennsylvania, so far, it's 2-1. So another way to say that is basically that Democrats pretty much everywhere, Democratic voters everywhere are requesting mail-in ballots at a much higher rate than Republicans. So that could, you know, be an indication as to why there's so much misinformation being spread about the process. And finally, Trump's tactics are voter suppression 101. And As Kay Dean so eloquently pointed out in her poem, we cannot let him succeed. We cannot let that happen. We know that there are many concerns about the vote by mail process and the Postal Service's ability to handle the increase in mail-in ballots. So Emma is going to give us some information that will hopefully ease any fears. But before we get started with that, we're just going to go ahead and do a quick stretch.
Phew, that's a lot of really frustrating information, isn't it? So we would like to invite you all to sort of just shake it out. Just like get that negative energy out of here. Reach for your rights. Reach and grab them and bring them to you, because we are empowered. We are empowered and we are here and we are grounding. You can roll your shoulders.
You can push out to the side and push away the misinformation.
Push away the lies. Get those lies away from us. That's enough of that. And just you can invite you to like do little face patters and just like welcome in some gentleness and wake yourself up. Give yourself some love and positivity, because we need it. Ground down through your feet. Feel your sits bones on your seat. We are here. We are empowered. We are grounded. We're gonna do it. We're doing it.
Passing it off now.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. Well, now we're really going to get into the nitty gritty. So this next section is going to be all about the details of how to vote step by step. And we're going to cover some frequently asked questions, a lot of the questions that came up with our first intro question. During this section, Katie, you can wait on those, but during this section, Katie is going to be helping me by dropping lots of links into the chat as we go along. So we're doing that in case it's helpful for you to open those up right now and keep them on your browser. But if it's not helpful to open them up right now, or you're on your phone and you can't navigate a lot of different things, don't worry, because we'll be sending all the links after the training. So yeah, we'll be sending all those resources again after, but for folks who are interested, we'll be dropping lots of resources in the chat. And then again, this reminder that I had up top, all this information is just going to be for Pennsylvania. So if you don't live in Pennsylvania, it'll be different for you. All right, so we can start with the slides. Start bringing up the slides. All right, thank you. All right, so this year, everyone's gonna have 3 options for ways to vote. You're gonna have mail-in voting or vote by mail, which we've already mentioned. The second option is something that's being called over-the-counter mail-in voting, or what you could also call in-person early voting. And you probably really haven't heard anything about that yet, because this actually was just got the green light to move forward. So this is brand new information that you probably haven't heard that much about yet, and I'll explain a little bit more about what it means in a few minutes. The third option is the one that you're probably most familiar with, which is in person on election day. So you have 3 options this year. You can, it's up to you which one you do. But before you do any of those options, you are going to have to be registered to vote. Today is actually National Voter Registration Day, so it's a great day to check your voter registration and register. And Kadeen dropped a link in the chat that is a link that you can go to register to vote. So tonight we're gonna be talking mainly about those first 2 options, because those are brand new this year in Pennsylvania, and because of COVID, over half of Pennsylvania voters voted by mail in 2020, in the 2020 primary. So let's start with option number 1. Mail-in voting. So we can go to the next slide. This is an overview of the vote by mail process. Essentially, you're going to apply for a mail-in ballot. You're going to get your mail-in ballot back. You're going to fill it out, and you're going to send it back in. But we're going to, so that's the basic steps, and now we're going to go into a little more detail. So if you have If you have a driver's license or a state ID card, you can actually apply for your mail-in ballot application online. And Kadeen just dropped that link in the chat. So that's where you can apply online for your mail-in ballot. If you don't have a driver's license or a state ID card, you can go to a link where you can print out your mail-in application and then send it in. So we also have a link to that one as well. All right, so one thing on the application that I wanted to mention, because I've noticed that some people have gotten a little thrown off by it. So if you go to this next slide, this is the first page of what the online application looks like, and it asks these 3 questions. And I think just because, you know, the questions are being asked, people feel like they need to answer yes to one of them to be able to move forward with the application. But that's not true. Everybody has the right to vote by mail. This year, you don't need an excuse to vote by mail. If, you know, obviously if one of those is true for you, you should put yes, but if none of them are true, you can just put no for all of them and move forward with the application. So just wanted to name that because I've seen some people get thrown off by that. Okay, so the next step is you're gonna receive your ballot in the mail. This is a picture of what the envelope looked like during the primary. It's gonna look really similar for the general election. So keep an eye out for something that looks like that. It'll say official election ballot, so hopefully it'll be hard to miss. So you'll get that, and then you'll wanna open it up right away. And this is what you're gonna see inside. So paper number 1 here is basically instructions for how to fill out your mail-in ballot. You know, you will want to take a look at that. There's some things that are kind of specific, like you can only fill out your ballot with black or blue ink. And so, you know, take a look at those instructions. The second piece of paper that you'll see is an explanation of all the ballot questions that are going to be on there. So they just give a little more explanation in more plain language than the legalese that is on the ballot. And then the third thing you see here, number 3, is the official ballot. So that's what you're gonna follow along on the ballot and fill in the bubbles for the candidates or for the ballot questions that you want to vote for. Once you're done filling that out, you'll fold it back up the way, you know, it'll have fold lines. You'll just fold it back up and put it into the official election ballot envelope. So that's number 4. So you'll put your ballot in there, and then you'll put it in envelope number 5. So basically an envelope inside of an envelope, and that outside envelope number 5 will have, it'll be pre-addressed with where you're sending it to, and the postage is already paid for. So you'll stick that back in the mail. So you can stick it back in the mail. Or the other thing that's new is that you can also drop it off in person. So starting next week on September 29th, the city will be opening 17 election offices around the city, and you can drop off your ballot at any of those locations. 7 days a week. So there may even be more ballot drop-off boxes that will be announced, but those details are still being figured out because they just got the green light for this. So this brings me to the second way that you can vote in this election, which I am really excited about. These 17 election offices that they're opening next Tuesday will basically serve as like a one-stop shop for all for everything that you need to do as a voter. So starting next week, you can go to one of these offices, you could register to vote, you can apply for your mail-in ballot, they'll give you the mail-in ballot right there, you can fill it out and hand it back to them. So it essentially I'm getting a chat that the offices are actually open Monday through Thursday, 11:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. and then Friday through Sunday, 9:30 to 4:30 p.m. So these offices are open 7 days a week, and gives you some various times to be able to go. But the reason this is so exciting is because essentially what they're doing here is they're using they're using the mail-in voting process to essentially create in-person early voting in Pennsylvania. And we haven't had that before. So in the past, there was if you wanted to vote in person, you could only go on Tuesday in November from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And some people work all of those hours. Like, so my mom, for example, is a nurse and works 12-hour shifts. So if you have a shift that day, you're going to have to figure out a different way to vote. And so this opens up a lot more options for people to vote and makes voting a lot more accessible, like it should be. And this is a really big advancement. And this was something that was in the works even before COVID as an option to basically give people more options of times to vote. And I think it would be if you are, if you're not feeling sure about, if you're still not feeling sure about the mail-in ballot process, but are still nervous about being around a lot of people, going to one of these offices could be a way to vote in person, but have it, not have as much lines or as many people there. All right, so that is the two options that we went through to vote. And now I'm going to go over some important dates that you should know. Oh, and I'm seeing in the chat, does it matter which location you go to? I don't, no, you can go to any location. Oh, sorry, I'm reading the chat. So someone called and said I can go to City Hall and vote early as of today. I think it's as of starting Tuesday. I mean, the City Hall is you might be able to do that at City Hall already because that's not one of the new offices that they're opening. That's the main election office. But definitely starting Tuesday, all of the offices will be open that were listed there. And we'll send that list out after the training so people have that as a reference. All right, so official deadline. So these are, I want to let you know the official deadlines, but I also want to emphasize that you should not wait until these deadlines. There's no need to, and you're going to cause an unnecessary headache for yourself. All right, so October 19th is your last day to register, but like I said, you can do that today. October 27th is your last day to apply for a mail-in ballot, but that one I would really not wait to apply until October 27th, because if you think about it, you have to send in the application, they have to mail it back to you, and then you mail it back to them. That's a lot to happen between October 27th and November 3rd. So I definitely wouldn't, that's the official deadline, but I wouldn't wait until that deadline to apply for your mail-in ballot. And November 3rd is election day. And then mail-in, they actually just extended the deadline for mail-in ballots. So mail-in ballots must be postmarked on or before 8 p.m. on November 3rd, but they can be received up until 5 p.m. the Friday after election day. So that you have to put it in the mail, it has to be postmarked by election day, but they can come in a few days after. And one thing that's just worth noting there is because that's now the case, it is very likely that we won't know the results of the election on November 3rd like we're used to getting the results in the evening. It might be like a few days or a week before we get the results, and especially because, like we talked about in the last workshop, Pennsylvania could be the deciding state in the election, and we might be waiting a week to be able to get our ballots. Because I think I saw someone ask in the chat earlier, do they have to wait until election day to count the ballots? And they do. They're trying to contest that right now, but that's currently the case. Okay, so I know I'm throwing a ton of information at you, and I'm seeing a lot of questions in the chat that I'm not able to follow all of them, but basically the next section that we're going to do is we are going to go over some questions that we saw in the chat, some frequently asked questions, but then we're going to break up into small groups and make lists of even more questions that we'll be able to answer as many as we can on this call tonight. And then if we don't get to them, we'll send them out after the training. So let's go into those frequently asked questions. And I'm going to have, so we're going to I'm going to have Ebony ask me the questions, and then I'm going to answer them. So Ebony, let's do our first question.
Yes. So first, frequently asked question, how can I be sure my ballot gets in on time?
Yeah, so this is what I was saying before. Don't wait until the deadline. That's a really easy way to make sure that your ballot gets in on time. So by that I mean, apply for your mail-in ballot right now, and then as soon as you get it, don't let it sit around your house. Fill it out and send it back in. I think I saw in the chat that some people applied in August and haven't gotten them yet. They're just about to start sending them out, so it won't be that long of a wait for, like, if you apply now from August. And then, and if you are close to the deadline, what I would recommend is dropping off your ballot in person instead of mailing it back in, because that'll just cut down a little more time. All right, what's the next question?
Before I read it, I just want to highlight that I see that some people are answering questions in the chat because they have experience having done this before. So I just want to highlight that if you've asked a question related to this process, also check out the chat, because some folks have experience and are answering those questions. So keep it coming.
Great.
Second question, how can I be sure my mail-in vote, how can I be sure my mail-in vote is counted?
Yeah, and I saw that in the chat earlier in the training. You can track your ballot. So you'll see here, this is the link where you can track your ballot. And this is actually where, this is a screenshot of what I got when I put in my name and birthday to track my ballot. So you can see I applied for the mail-in ballot in August. They processed that application, and now I'm waiting for them to mail my ballot back to me. That should be any day now. I'll see that they've mailed it back, and I'll keep an eye out for my mail. And then when I send it back and they receive it and process it, so they count it, that it'll show up on that tracker that they counted my ballot. So you can verify all that online, just like you do. Just like, when you vote in person, you get a confirmation that your vote has been counted. What's our next question?
What happens if I apply for a mail-in ballot and get one, but then decide I don't want to vote in person?
This is a really good question. So if you apply for your mail-in ballot, but then decide you want to go in person on election day, you can actually just hold on to that ballot that they gave you. So the envelope and the ballot itself, all those pieces that they showed you earlier, hold on to those pieces and bring it to your polling place on election day, and give it back to your poll workers. So even if you started to fill it out and changed your mind, or you filled it out entirely but decided, oh, it's too close to the deadline, I don't want to mail it in, I'm just going to go in person. If you give that back to them, they know that you didn't submit it. They have it from you. So then they'll just let you. You'll give that to them, and then they'll just let you vote like normal on election day. Next question. Great.
What happens if I apply for a mail-in ballot and for some reason I don't get one?
So this actually happened to my husband during the primary. He, I don't know if it's very possible we got it at our house and just misplaced it, or, something happened, but for some reason he applied and it just never showed up. But what you can do, and what he did, is you should still go to your polling place on election day. So you won't be able to vote on the machine like you normally do, but what you can do and what you should do is vote on what's called a provisional ballot. And that's a paper ballot that you can fill out. And basically what this means is that they'll take that paper ballot and they'll double check that you didn't send in a mail-in ballot. And then once they have confirmed that you didn't send in a mail-in ballot, they'll count your vote as normal. But it's basically just an extra layer of security to make sure that you didn't send in a mail-in ballot and vote on election day. All right, this is our last question.
All right. I still don't feel comfortable with this. Can I just vote in person?
Of course, yeah. You can still definitely just vote in person, or you can vote early in person, the second option that we were talking about. Everyone just needs to make sure that they have a plan and know how they're going to vote. But as long as you're set up with that plan, you can vote whichever way you want. And if you go in person, just make sure to wear your mask. All right, cool. So those were some of the questions that we got earlier and some of the ones that I've been hearing. But now we're going to break up into smaller groups to reflect on what's one thing you just learned. I just threw a lot of information at you. So what's one thing that you just learned? But I could tell in the chat that people still have questions. So you'll also talk about what questions do you still have? And then, and then what we're gonna do is compile those questions. So when you go into your breakout groups, each breakout group will have a number, and you'll have a slide that we can put the interactive slides back in the chat. So we'll go to that same link that you were at before. And you just need one note taker. So even if not everyone can go to that link, just have one note taker in your group, take notes on all your questions, and then we'll come back together. And I'll try and answer as many of those questions as I can. But if I can't answer all of them, or if we don't have enough time, I'll still have that list, and I'll send out a follow-up email after to make sure everybody's questions get answered and that everybody can be set up to have a plan to vote. This is the slide for notes. All right, so now we're going to go into breakout groups. Great. All right, so let's see what other questions we came up with. Do you want to go to the next slide? All right, so this first one I think is a campaign question. So I don't think I'm able to answer that as a nonpartisan training, but I think you could probably Google it and find one. How long are they going to take? How long are they going to take to count these votes? Yeah, so this answer, we don't know this for sure, how long it's going to take. This will be a new experience for Pennsylvania and for the administrators running the election. So we can't say an exact number right now, but we know it's probably, I feel comfortable saying they're probably not going to be done counting them the night of the election. It'll probably take a few more days, especially because mail-in ballots can now come in 3 days after the election and can be counted. Early voting sites. All right, so we learned about the early voting sites. We were excited. What about the ballot boxes, mailboxes painted with the American flag that were around for the primary that used to exist? Will they be an option for mail-in ballots? Yes, that is a very good question. So, all 17 of these offices that we mentioned before will serve as a similar function where you can drop off your mail-in ballot at those locations. And there will probably be more drop boxes with the American flags like the ones you saw in the primary. They just haven't announced those locations yet. That should be coming in the next week or two. The reason there was a delay in announcing it is because the Trump administration actually sued to stop there from being mail-in ballot drop boxes. And so just this past week, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court overruled that and said we can go forward with the mail-in drop-off boxes, but it's just delayed administrators in being able to get them set up and get the information out there. But it'll be coming in the next few weeks. All right, so breakout room 2 questions. There needs to be more guidance in the instructions. So, okay, so can someone from group 2 say more about this question? And you can just go off mute.
2 of us were saying that when we voted in the primary by mail-in, that the instructions were complicated enough that they weren't, like they're signing the envelope, I think, and then somebody else didn't put their ballot in the second envelope, and then they or in the first envelope, put it in the second envelope, then had to open it, and they're not sure their vote ended up getting counted because it looked like their envelope was open. So that it feels really important to know what the steps are.
Yeah.
Putting
Well, I think, yeah, I can try and send more detailed instructions, maybe in a way that are better, easier to follow than the way if the instructions that came with the ballot weren't enough. I can try and send a follow-up on that. The one thing I would say is if you had to do something where you had to reopen your ballot and you're concerned about that, I would actually recommend taking, if you're able to just go on election day, I would recommend taking, and if you're worried about because something happened to your mail-in ballot, you're worried about it counting, you can still take that ballot to your polling place on election day, surrender that ballot so that you can just vote in person. If it's going to give you the peace of mind that you will feel more confident that your vote will be counted. And so is that helpful, Carolyn?
Well, I guess it just is something where if part of why you're doing mail-in is to avoid going in, then it does feel like, I'm not sure what my choice is going to be in the end.
Yeah.
But I could see not wanting to go in person to have to correct, but.
Yeah. Well, hopefully between the primary experience and this training, you know about the steps that you have to put the envelope in the other envelope and follow those instructions. That hopefully you can feel confident that in filling it out the right way, and avoid that mistake of having to open it again. But I will try and send out. I'll get a copy from the commissioner's office of the instructions for filling out the ballot, and then make sure that it's even more, if there's any places that it's unclear, I'll get that answered. In putting together this training, I was able to talk with the election commissioner's office and get all the details. So I think that's something I could follow up with. So the last question is, what paperwork do you need to take to the polls if you didn't receive your mail-in ballot? So you won't, if you didn't receive a mail-in ballot, there's not really any paperwork you can bring. But what you can do is you can go to your polling place on election day. They'll have a record there that you requested a mail-in ballot. So what you'll do is you'll vote by provisional ballot. You'll fill out one of those paper ballots, and then on their end, they'll be able to confirm that you didn't send in a mail-in ballot, and then count your vote. All right, let's see, breakout room number 3.
Oh. I think that we made some edits after this was screen grabbed.
Oh, wait, I think you can update the slide. Christy, maybe?
I didn't realize I could type all those things in, so I failed as a secretary.
Well, for the last.
It's not my day for text stuff. So embarrassing.
Well, we'll be able, breakout room 4 can just ask their questions after. We'll do. Let's see what we learned. Questions we still have. What if your ballot never shows up? What are your options? So yeah, so this is similar to what we were just talking about. If your ballot doesn't show up, you can still go to your polling place on election day and vote a provisional ballot. I think if you live, I think the drop-off locations, those election offices are just for Philadelphia County. So if you live in another county, I don't think you can use those election offices. I'm not sure about the ballot drop boxes. I can ask about that when they put out those other ballot drop box locations. Actually, no, sorry, I do know that because they're going to be counted by the Philadelphia County Commissioner's Office. So that's not the right place to put your ballot if you're not from Philadelphia. Are our polling locations changing back from the primary? Changing back, seeing signs about proposed polling place changes. So you should always, before you go to vote, you should always check where your polling place is. It's not, you know, some might be changed, some might not. So you know, we can't answer that question across the board, but you can look online at where your polling place is before you go on election day, and that is definitely part of making your plan to vote. All right, so we're now going to go to breakout room 4, and we can stop sharing the slides. But if that, so I know I went over a few more questions. If that group has any additional questions that weren't answered, maybe someone from the group can share. It's also okay if the questions were already answered, but I want to give people a minute. All right. Is there any other questions that people had even in the other breakout groups that you're still wondering about that we haven't touched on?
It looks like there's one in the chat about criminal records that are expunged.
Oh, well, that's a perfect segue into the next section where we're going to make sure everybody knows their rights about who can register to vote and who can vote. So yeah, let's do it. Do you know your rights? So in this section, we're going to do a true false about particularly around things that there are common misconceptions around voting rights. And this time, rather than the slides, I'll give the true false statement, and you can put in the chat true or false, or if you just want to write T or F, you can do that. So let's get started. All right, true or false? You can only register to vote if you are 18.
False.
I'm hearing false. I see false in the chat. It is a tricky one. But yeah, you can go to the next slide, Christy. It is false. It was a little bit of a tricky question because, you know, obviously you have to be 18 to vote, but you can register and vote as long as you turn 18 on or before election day. So if you know anybody out there who's 17 right now but has a birthday in October or on November, you know, between now and November 3rd, they can register to vote right now and start that process. All right, true or false? If you will be released from incarceration for a felony conviction by election day, you can register and vote in this election. True or false?
True.
See, I hear true. Let's see, anybody else want to put some, try in the chat? True. Yeah, false. All right, let's go to the next slide. This is true. So once you have, and this is, you know, again, this is something that's specific to Pennsylvania. Once you have served your time for a felony conviction, your voting rights are restored as soon as you're released. So I think that gets at the question about expunge, because it's as soon as you've served your time, your voting rights are restored when you're released. I also wanted to note that you can vote if you're currently in jail for a misdemeanor, if you're on house arrest, or if you're in jail awaiting trial. You just need to request an absentee ballot. And that's an important one to share because a lot of people don't know that, and they don't know that they can request an absentee ballot. All right, next question. True or false? You can register to vote if you are currently experiencing homelessness. True or false? I see true, true,
True.
true. Yep, true. All right, great. We can go to the next slide. Oh, yeah. It's true. You can register and vote if you are currently experiencing homelessness. You just have to register to vote with an address where you can get mail. So that could be a shelter or a program that will receive your mail for you. All right, let's do the next one. True or false, people are not allowed to have help inside the voting booth. People are not allowed to have help inside the voting booth. You see a false in the chat, false?
False.
False. You all are good. This is good. Yeah, so you can go to the next slide. That is false. Anyone can have assistance with voting inside the voting booth. You just need to fill out a form on election day called the Declaration of Assistance, and you can choose anyone to help you. It can be anyone except your employer, your union leader, or the judge of elections, if you know her or him. Okay. Great. All right. All right. True or false? If you are in line before or at the time the polls close, you will be allowed to cast your vote. So if you're in line before or at the time the polls close, you will be allowed to cast your vote. True or false?
True.
True. Can't get anything past y'all. Yep, you can go to the next one. This is true. You just need to be in line so polls close at 8 p.m. You just need to be in line by 8 p.m. I have another hot tip here. If you're voting on election day, the busiest times tend to be morning and evening. People go before work, after work. So if you're available during the day, try going in the middle of the day to try and miss some crowds. And I think this next one is our last one. True or false, you need to have ID to vote. See the true, false, true, false, false.
Don't you need it the first time?
Hattie, you're good. All right, you can go to the next slide. This is a trick question because it's true and false. So you'll be asked to show ID if it's your first time voting at your polling site. So it can be, and that can be a photo ID or a non-photo ID. And there's a list here of acceptable forms of photo ID. And if you have an ID that doesn't match your gender identity, you can use a non-photo form of ID. So one thing to note though, even if it's your first time, not having or showing ID can never be a reason to stop you from voting. If you don't have ID, you're always allowed to vote by provisional ballot. So that's that paper ballot that we were talking about before. Well, so you won't be on the machine, but you'll vote a paper ballot and they'll just double check it after and then count your vote. So not having an ID can't ever be a reason to stop you from voting. All right, and that is Know Your Rights. Anybody have any questions before we close out this section? All right. So I think I'm gonna now pass it to Kadeen to close us out.
Awesome, Emma, thank you. So here's the next steps, guys. Step number 1, make your plan to vote. What are you gonna do? Are you gonna go in person? Are you gonna mail in your vote? Are you gonna do mail-in over the counter? Make your plan. Step number 2, make a list of 5 friends and family members in Philly and get them to vote as well. Step 3, reach out to them and make sure they have a plan to vote as well. I'm also about to drop a link in the survey, a link in the chat for a survey for you guys about this training. We want to know exactly how we're doing. So please take this survey for us. You can copy the link, you can paste it in your browser. If you're on your phone, you can copy the link and save it to your notes inside of your phone. Will this survey also be emailed to everyone? Emma? Will the survey link also be emailed to people as well?
Yeah, but if you can do it now, that's even better.
You can do it now. It will really, really help us, and we appreciate it. So in closing, our next workshop will be about what comes after the election. Voting is just one piece of this puzzle, right? We have to keep organizing between elections to win what we deserve. So it will be held on October 20th from 6 to 8 p.m. on this exact same Zoom link. Put a plus in the chat if you plan on being there. We would love for you. Where's my plus sign? I'm gonna put a plus too, because I plan on being there. There we go. Boop. All right, I got a plus from Izzy and Sarah. Sounds good. And just to close out, we will do a one-word checkout. I will call on you and ask you to share one word about how you feel at the end of this workshop. Okay, so the first person I am going to call on is Miss Carolyn. What is your one word?
Informed.
Informed. Great, awesome. That makes us feel great. Next, I have Miss Kay Hayward.
I thought it was great. It was well planned. We had some snafus, but good. Sorry, that's more than one word.
It's okay. Thank you very much. Next, we have Miss Hattie. What's your one word takeaway?
Asset.
An asset and not a liability. I like that. All right, Miss Rita Joe.
Oh, I'm one of the interpreters. Thank you for asking anyway.
Oh, thank you. Next we have Miss Natasha.
I feel hopeful, actually.
Oh, all right. Next we have Jenny.
I feel confident.
Confident, I love it. Hey, Dominique, you're next. You're on mute.
Motivated, I'm sorry.
Motivated, wonderful. Hi, Miss Nancy, you're next.
Informed.
Informed, excellent. Next we have Carolyn Haynes.
I like the word motivated too.
Yeah, me too. Next we have Terry.
I'm gonna go with excited.
Excited. Excited to fight. Love it. Izzy and Mary.
Ready to swarm.
Oh, you guys are awesome. Swarm away. Next we have Sarah.
I feel relieved.
Yeah, that's a good word. Yeah. Hi, Angelita, you're next.
I am energized.
Energized. Good, yes. June, you're next. Miss Rita?
No, I don't get to play. I'm one of the interpreters.
No, I was hoping.
Okay, I feel great, and I'm looking forward to voting.
Awesome, great
Okay.
is a great word.
On my way.
Awesome. Next we have Kayla. I think it might be muted. I see her thumbs up. That's good enough for me. Next we have Katie.
Informative. Like very interesting and informative.
Interesting and informative. Great. Emma?
Pumped up.
You're pumped up. How about you, Christy?
I'm ready.
Awesome. Ebony?
I feel full. I'm
Full.
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 Mhm.
And Mr. Tony, are you still there?
More information on how to get voting done.
Mm-hmm. And my word is I feel empowered. I feel empowered. So that's everybody. Thank you so much. Can we get a little bit of music?
Don't forget to fill out that survey.
Please do that survey.
I'll take you there. I'll take you